This is the Almost Timely newsletter for the week of October 6th, 2024. Content authenticity statement: 100% of this week's newsletter was generated by me, the human. You will see AI usage and outputs in this video. So we're going to be looking at ICP use cases. There's a link at the top of the newsletter to understand why this kind of disclosure is important and a good idea and might be required in some parts of the world in the near future. The big plug, if you haven't caught it, the two talks that I did recently, one was a masterclass at Inbound 2024, the other at MACON, the Marketing AI Conference. So go check those out. They are free to watch. What's on my mind this week? Use cases for ideal customer profiles. Katie asked me this week to cover synthetic ideal customer profiles because it is something that we are starting to generate for customers, for people. And to be perfectly frank, because we want to be doing more of it. Now, we have talked at length about ideal customer profiles, which you can see links in the newsletter for videos and live streams and newsletters and podcast episodes, all these things on this topic. And of course, as I said, we offer this as a service. So since we've all got all that covered about the basics of it, let's talk today about what you do with an ideal customer profile. All too often, people take a consulting document like an ICP and they shelve it. Becomes shelfware, becomes binderware, binders full of ICPs, very attractive binders, very attractive ICPs, but you don't do anything with them. They sit next to your SWOT analysis and your Porter's 5 Forces analysis and that expensive product market fit analysis that you hired that very expensive consulting firm to do. This is a terrible fate for any useful document, but none more so than the ideal customer profile. So let's dig into some examples of what you can do with these things to make them come to life and, frankly, to make them worth the investment. Part one, what's inside? A good ideal customer profile is going to have some basics, right? And obviously, we throw a lot of stuff in ours. Let me bring up a copy of mine so you can see it. The basics are going to vary based on your business to some degree, but are pretty standard. Demographics. We see the demographics: age, gender, education, experience, job titles, roles, person level details. Psychographics, like values, culture, activities, interests, and opinions. Firmographics, industry, company size, annual revenue, location and geography, ownership structure, technologies and tools. Then you go down into see things like the needs. What are the needs that this person has? This ideal customer profile, by the way, is built for my speaking stuff. So I built an ideal customer profile for event planners, things. So we have the needs: high quality speakers, relevant content, so on and so forth. Pain points: difficulty finding speakers, balancing costs with conference budgets, etc. You have goals. What are the goals of this person? What are the motivations of this person? What are the buying behaviors, each step in the buyer's journey? Awareness, consideration, evaluation, purchase, decision-making process. How do they buy things? Purchasing patterns and exclusion criteria. What are the things that make someone not ideal? Right? Like event planners have no budget. Yeah, that's not going to be a good fit. Organizations that rarely use outside talent, events that could care less about AI. All of these things are really important. The difference between a buyer persona, your standard buyer persona, that, Sally soccer mom, whatever, and an ICP is that ICPs are generally synthesized from actual data. When Katie builds them for clients, she gathers up like half a dozen different data sources and uses generative AI to blend them all together. And as you saw from that one, the key to a good ICP is this: in general, for making use of an ICP, it should contain as much relevant, specific information as possible. More is better as long as it's relevant and specific, because we're going to use these for generative AI. In a lot of past ICPs, they've been pithy one-pagers with a simulated photo or whatever. You don't have to worry about overwhelming a human stakeholder's mere human brain with lots of details when you're using ICPs with AI. And that is a key difference between the ICPs you're probably used to and a synthetic ICP intended for use with AI. That's important. This the ICPs that that I was just going through, I don't want a person to read that. That's not exciting. I mean, they can. You're welcome to read it, but it's not for you. It's not for me. It's for machines. So, part 2, obvious use cases. Once you've got a solid ICP that's ready for generative AI, there is a universe of things you can do with them. Load it into the generative AI system of your choice and have your ICP do things like validate your marketing copy and brainstorm ideas for content by talking to it, test things like email subject lines and ad copy. How you do this is more important than the tasks themselves. A lot of people approach these tasks very naively with ICPs as opposed to rigorously. What do I mean? Naive use of an ICP is giving it to generative AI. I could just load this into Gemini and say, hey, what do you think of this idea? With a detailed, high-quality ICP, that will still generate good results, but it's not going to be optimal results. So what should you do? There's a defined process I use with things like ICPs when it comes to evaluation. First, you prime the model with background information, including the ICP. You summarize the information into best practices to reinforce its importance within the conversation. And this is something that a lot of people miss about generative AI. Remember that everything in the conversation becomes part of the next prompt. Everything in the conversation becomes part of the next prompt. So when you have generative AI restate or summarize the information to that point, what you were doing is you were adding more weight to those words and phrases and concepts that changes the in-conversation weight of those ideas and makes them more prominent and more important. It's an important thing, particularly with smaller models that are like open models. Step 3, build a scoring rubric for the evaluation process. Step 4, evaluate whatever the content is using the rubric, the best practices. And then step 5, encapsulate the rubric and best practices into some kind of app. Let's do an example together so that you can see this play out. So we're going to start with speaking pitches. So I'm going to go into my my Google Gemini here. And let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to load one of my system prompts just to get a lot of background information. And I'm going to say, your topic is best practices for a keynote speaker to email pitch events about being hired as the event's next keynote speaker. And what the system instructions I have set up to do here do 4 things. They say, what do you know about this? Right? What are the best practices? What are things people get wrong? 5 things. What are things people believe to be true but are false? What are things that are false but people believe to be true? And then finally, what are expert tips and tricks we have not talked about? And so what this is doing with Google's Gemini is it's asking all this information. So best practices for a keynote speaker to email pitch events, right? Top simulation, what are the targeting the right events, craft a compelling subject line, personalize the email, showcase your expertise, and so on and so forth. Common mistakes, generic pitches, unclear value proposition, and so on and so forth. Generally believed to be true but actually false. You need a fancy website. Generally believed to be false but actually true. Personal connections matter more than anything. Smaller events can be excellent opportunities. Expert tips and tricks, bonus or exclusive offers. Do some research on your customers. So this is step 1 in the process, which is we just got to get this knowledge into the model. Now, let's do this. Let's go ahead and summarize this. I'm say, great, summarize all these points into a comprehensive, complete outline of best practices for a keynote speaker to pitch an event. So now it's going to build ourselves a nice outline of the major things that we're doing. Let's go ahead next and we're going to let's build a scoring rubric for the ICP. So let's introduce the ICP. Great. Next, I'm going to introduce you to the ideal customer profile for Christopher Penn's keynote speaking business. Let's see. I'm trying to think here if I should include a knowledge block about who I am. Not this time, but you know what? I may do that the next time. All right. Let's go ahead and add this our ICP. I know I'm just gonna copy and paste it. I won't need to upload it. With confirm that you have read this information by responding okay. Okay. Again, we don't need to have it be verbose here because there's a lot of information in this ICP. So there's no need for it to just foam at the mouth. All right. So we've got our background, our priming information. We've got our ICP. We've got our summary. Let's build now a scoring rubric. And what we want to do here is we want to build a way for a model to evaluate an email, right? An email pitch, right? We asked all about it. Now let's evaluate it. So I'm going to say, from this ideal customer profile for Christopher Penn's keynote speaking business, build a scoring rubric that will assess whether or not an email pitch serves the needs of the ICP. The input will be a email pitch from the user. The rubric should use variable integers. The rubric should total 100 points. Build the rubric. So remember, scoring rubrics are a way for models to step by step think through an evaluation. One of the things that you don't want to do when you ask a model to evaluate something is just say, yeah, tell me if it's good or not, because you're not encouraging what's called chain of thought, which is step-by-step thinking. If you remember back in high school and maybe college, particularly in math class, where you had to write proofs. I remember this in geometry class. I hated it. Sorry, Mrs. Insko, really hated your class. The proofs show that you know how you the work, how you got the answer. Like you didn't just randomly guess, that you actually understand the material. So this is essentially a rubric. This is the proof that a model would use to understand, like, yeah, I did the thing, and I did the thing intelligently. So I'm going to go ahead and save this because this is useful. We're going to put it to the side here. And now we're ready to start doing an evaluation. So let's take a piece of content. All right. Next, using the Christopher Penn keynote speaking ICP and the scoring rubric, evaluate and score this email pitch from Christopher Penn to an event planner. So we're going to have it say, hey, how good is this pitch? And I'll show you the pitch real quick because that's just self-interest. As you plan your upcoming event, blah, blah, blah. Here's why I will help your event stand out. Attendees of my keynotes get these benefits. Please add me to your consideration list. Here's a speaking reel. Here's a full-length talk, blah, 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 right? The usual good stuff. It's a okay enough pitch. Let's see what the ICP thinks. Let's see how it comes out in the rubric. Here's a breakdown. So 35 points possible. Addresses specific pain points, 7 out of 10. ICP goals, 8 out of 10. Offers solutions to challenges, 10 out of 15. Content, 6 out of 10 for value proposition clarity, 9 out of 10 for relevance to AI, 7 out of 10 for engaging and persuasive tone, 2 out of 10 for event-specific customization. Yeah, that's pretty obvious. Address to the relevant individual. They don't have that. Clear and concise writing, 4 out of 5. Compelling call to action, 3 out of 5. Professional formatting, 4 out of 5. So 67. Yeah, 67 out of 100. Okay, so, well, that could have gone better. However, what would we do? We would say, great, build a refinement of this pitch designed to improve the score based on the rubric, and have it try that and see what it comes up with. See if it comes out better. You can see there's placeholders in here. Here's some more tangible benefits. And now score the refinement. Let's see how we do. see, 9 out of 10 for pain points, 9 out of 10 for ICP goals, 14 out of 15 offering solutions to challenges, 8 out of 10 for value proposition, 9 out of 10 for relevance, 9 out of 10 for persuasive tone, 8 out of 10 for event-specific customization, 10 out of 10 assuming you fill in the fields, and so on and so forth. So 90 to 92 out of 100. That's a big difference. Now, let's read the pitch. Is it actually good? It says, I came across this thing, drawn to, yep, I'm an expert in AI. I understand defining speakers is tough. Here's this cool thing that I do, and so on and so forth. That's a pretty decent pitch, right? That's not bad. It is an improvement in some ways over the original. I would take this obviously and maybe do some A/B testing just to be sure. However, if I then wanted to codify this to turn it into something useful, I might go ahead and say something along the lines of, let's turn this into system instructions, right? So let's say, let's convert this entire conversation to be used in a language model like Google Gemini. The purpose of the prompt is to accept input from the user of a proposed speaking pitch email. The LLM will then perform the following tasks autonomously. 1, score the email according to the provided ICP and rubric. Actually, I should say along with an ICP and scoring rubric. 2, return the scores and evaluations. 3, if the score is less than 90, build a refinement of the pitch designed to improve the score. 4, score the refinement. 5, present the refinement in full. Ugh, I can't type today. Along with the score. And we should say you should incorporate everything we've talked about up to this point into this. Now, it's going to go and build essentially code. It's going to build code for an app. And what do we do with this code once it's done? Well, we're gonna put it in an actual app. So we have the refinement, and so okay, great. So I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna copy this. Let's move it over to a text document. Put that in there. Now you'll receive as input ideal customer profile, a scoring rubric, and so on and so forth. Let's go to our stock version of Google Gemini. Go to the gems manager here. Create a new gem and call this CSP speaking email pitch. Paste in all those instructions. Hit save. Congratulations. We now have that exact process boiled down into an app. And we provide an ICP, provide a rubric, and is off to the races. That's pretty powerful, right? That is pretty powerful for how you use an ICP. You follow the process, and for simple evaluation tasks, building apps like GPTs and gems and artifacts is the easiest way to scale the use of AI with an ICP at your company. Once you go through this process for a specific task like we just did, you can just hand over the finished app to someone else on your team, or just keep it for yourself so that you don't have to go for the process again. And then they can benefit from your expert development. So that's the basics for how to bring an ICP to life. You build some apps around it. Part 3, less obvious use cases. Asking an AI model to evaluate something like content against an ICP is a great, simple, easy use case. A less obvious use case is turning your ICP into buyer personas and having those buyer personas have a conversation with you for things like product market fit. For example, we've got my speaking ICP. It's to help me guide my marketing efforts being a keynote speaker. That's a straightforward use case. We just did it. We have no shortage of data about event planners whatsoever. And we just evaluated a version of it. But what if What if I don't know why I'm not getting gigs, right? Could an ICP help us with that? Maybe it'd be better if I could talk to maybe a couple of different event planners, maybe had a focus group or something, have a conversation. You can do that. Using the ICP, let's direct AI to split the ICP into pieces, right? We want to split it into maybe some different kinds of pieces. So let's do that. I'm going to take that ICP. Let's start a new thread here. And we're going to prime the model, as we always do, with our your topic is best practices for building synthetic personas from an ideal customer profile to be used in business role play, such as product market fit research. And look at the model cranking away. Once we have this, we're going to have it build a prompt. And so while it's churning away, I'm going to say, from this ideal customer profile for Christopher Penn's keynote speaking business, infer 3 character cards for personas to be used in business role playing real customers, fictionalized names, companies, and behavioral attributes speaking styles. The first persona should be an event planner for a major business marketing conference, a large conference with over 10,000 attendees. The second persona should be an event planner for a small industry conference within a vertical, such as financial services and fintech. The events are typically small, 100 to 150 people maximum, from practitioners in that industry. The third persona should be an event planner for a corporation looking for speakers for their upcoming Q1 annual sales and marketing kickoff. This is an internal event that is employee only and not open to the public. So now, instead of having an ICP, we're going to turn that ICP into people. Right? Why would you do this? Well, because a well-made ICP is so rich and robust with real data assembled from real people and real factual information, generative AI tools can infer a great deal from that data, extrapolating it into personas. So let's go ahead and load this and then put in our Christopher Penn ICP. Let's make sure there's a heading on that so that, yep, there is. Good. All right. Let's go ahead and hit run. And so we're going to get 3 fictional character cards. Persona 1, Aisha Khan, event planner for Mega Marketing Mania. That's great. Senior Conference Director, Mega Marketing Mania. Behavioral attributes, speaking style, quote. Persona 2, Ben Carter, event planner for FinTech Futures Forum. Program executive. Persona 3, Chloe Davis, event planner for Spark Innovations Incorporated. Which, I mean, these are all pretty decent personas. Say, great. Let's start a role play session moderated by me, Christopher Penn. We'll speak with all 3 people at the same time. Chloe, Ben, and Aisha. Role play the parts of Chloe, Ben, and Aisha in a natural, free-flowing conversation that you would find in a focus group. I will begin the role play by asking everyone how they are and you will respond appropriately as each attendee. Respond in the speaking styles you built for the personas. All right, let's see how this goes. All right, looks like we have I forgot to share the screen for this, didn't I? Okay, so here's the synthetic persona stuff. Here's the consolidated ICP that I put in. Here's the personality styles. I forgot to show this. Persona 1, Aisha Khan, the senior conference director of Mega Marketing Mania, Ben Carter, Chloe Davis, and then I put in this prompt. And so what do we see? We see the conversations underway. Aisha, direct and brisk, doing well. Thanks for having us. Time is precious, so let's make us this efficient. Ben Carter, thoughtful and measured. Chloe Davis, enthusiastic, upbeat. I'm fantastic, and so on and so forth. So they all have interesting questions. Start. Say, great. Let's get started by having you evaluate the general topic for my next keynote. And let's go to my speaking boilerplates things and find this. I'm going to put this in. What are your initial reactions? So Aisha's skeptical. And doesn't want motivational slogans. Ben is intrigued but reserved, and Chloe is enthusiastic with a touch of pragmatism. Right. So this is clearly we got some work to do because like, it seems okay, but it's not great. And I'm gonna pause the role play here, but you get the idea of what you can do with this. You can have conversations, and not just generic conversations, but sometimes maybe adversarial ones. Right? Because the needs of someone like Aisha are going to be different than Ben and different than Chloe. They have different business priorities. Unlike talking to a monolithic ideal customer profile, which again is great for basic stuff, using the ICP as a basis for personas allows us to create these adversarial variants, personas that might not be as receptive to our sales and marketing or whatever we're pitching. Like I'm pitching my new keynote idea and they're like, don't like it. Right? This is a great way to see how different segments of the market might react. Telling the model, be skeptical, be an outright critic, be adversarial, be hostile. I've done this in crisis communications examples where I've had Charles the critic who just knee-jerk dislikes everything, and Carlos the conspiracy nut who just goes unhinged with all sorts of crazy things that he comes up with. And it's great for showing people like, yeah, this is the kind of thing you might encounter. So those are some uncommon use cases. Again, using the power of generative AI with the ICP, taking the ICP as the breeding ground to split out personas that you can then use for role play. And not just for focus groups, but think about having a conversation about maybe an upcoming announcement. Maybe you have audience members. You have an audience of ICPs, and here's some controversial news. Hey, we're going to have to increase our prices 20%. Everyone, how do you feel? And you get the ICP reactions in ways that you can tune up or down and prepare people. Like, yeah, you're going to get, Aisha's going to rip your face off if you raise your prices like that much. So let's move on. Part 4. Let's kick things up a notch. As the cooking show aphorism goes, what are some more technically challenging use cases for ICPs? Well, for one thing, you can talk to them directly as though they were real people. I did an example this week using OpenAI's ChatGPT Advanced Voice Mode on my website, and I did a couple of different examples of this. So let me roll one of them, and so you can just get a sense of what this sounds like.
Game changer for how we understand and engage with our audience. I'd love to explore how we can integrate this into our existing workflows. Can you share more about how it works?
Sure. So pretty easy. We would come in to your company, and with a process that Katie built will take whatever existing data you have, as long as it's in good condition, format it, put it through a special piece of code that we've built. So you get the idea. This is using the ICP as a persona that you then have a conversation with. You talk to it, and yeah, I think you get probably like an hour's worth of voice time a day right now in the Chat GPT app. That's pretty cool that you can just have that conversation. Now, there's some limitations doing it that way, but this week OpenAI announced you can use those same voices via their API. So you can build an entire app around them, which is pretty cool. On that aspect, OpenAI is still catching up. I did another version where I had the ICP act as a podcast host, and I said, "Okay, here's my latest LinkedIn piece. I want you to behave like an interviewer and interview me, the expert." So let's listen to this. As a result, they get the critical thinking exercises that you need to be a good discerning consumer of information, and they get to use machines for what machines are best at.
That's an intriguing approach, blending AI with critical thinking to enhance learning. It seems like a key takeaway here is the importance of context in using AI tools. Looking ahead, how do you envision the relationship between AI and human creativity evolving? Will there be a shift in how we perceive and value content creation?
I think. Okay, that is available on my YouTube channel if you want to listen to the whole interview. But everyone and their cousins using Notebook LM to make synthetic podcasts, which is fine. There is a market for that. There's a market for just summaries of things. But wouldn't it be much cooler if AI was asking you the questions to position you as the expert? That's how you would use an ICP to be a customer, right? To say like, hey, or to be an interviewer, to be something, whatever the thing is for your business, and showcase you, right? To put you in the spotlight. I did another example this week with Google's synthetic voices for a live phone call style focus group, in which I took, kind of like the Aisha, Ben, and Chloe example. I took two people, gave them each unique voices from Google's voice engine, and talk to them. So let's go ahead and see if we can roll that clip. Good morning, everyone. How are we doing today?
Good morning, Chris. Doing pretty well. Excited to chat about enhancing your sales and marketing strategies.
Good morning, Chris. I'm doing great, thanks. Ready to dive in and share some insights.
Terrific. Today, I want to ask you about Trust Insights, my company, and offering a new service for synthetic ideal customer profile creation. What do you think about this concept?
Sounds interesting, Chris. I'd be curious to see how it integrates with our existing customer data platforms and what kind of ROI we can expect.
Well, Chris, I think data integration and measurable results would be key for us. So how does your service address those areas specifically?
Well, ideal customer profiles. So you get the idea, right? It's a focus group, but instead of you typing on a screen, you have it as a conversation. You talk to these people like they were real people. And so if you have people, particularly in your company, who are not technical at all, you would deploy something like this that would then, they could interact with just as naturally as picking up the phone. You can use your ICP to make personas to have those conversations, and people will get benefit out of that. Now, what else can you do that's more challenging but would be fantastic? You could build an entire synthetic advisory service. For example, you could take one of your personas, like Aisha or Ben or whatever, take the news of the week in your industry and have your ICP-based persona email you asking questions about what the news means for your business, right? Since everyone's in love with podcasts made by AI, have your personas discussing the marketing news of the week. Your personas, your ICP, not the generic Notebook LM, but yours, and then interviewing as an expert on the topic. So let's look at a quick example of how this might work. Let's go back to Google Gemini. I'm going to leave the ICPs here. I'm going to let's take a bunch of headlines from Ahrefs. Let's sort it by domain rating because we want higher quality stuff here. And you'll notice that they've got a decent amount of stuff here in the news. I'm just going to copy this initial set of articles, and I'm going to say, great, let's stop the role play. Next, I'd like you to just embody the Aisha. Actually, let's use the Chloe Davis one because Chloe's the one that's at a company. Davis persona only. I'm going to provide you with some news about AI and marketing. Start by having Chloe think aloud and wonder aloud what this news might mean for her company. And let's go ahead and put that news in. These are just snippets of headlines, so I should probably clean it up a little bit. And let's do a process duplicate lines here to get rid of some of the garbage. There we go. That's much better looking. And we can just do a quick remove of anything that's political because nobody wants that in their AI news. All right, so let's see what Chloe has to say. This is a lot to digest. OpenAI seems to be everywhere and burning through cash like crazy. If they're raising prices for ChatGPT that much, it makes me wonder if we should be looking at other things. So now imagine, again, using text to speech, Chloe could read this aloud. However, let's say, great, have Chloe, who knows Christopher Penn and knows his role as a keynote speaker, ask Christopher Penn in a simulated email what his expert advice would be on all the news as it impacts Chloe and her company. Write the email. So, hey, it's been a while. I've been following all this news. It's overwhelming. There's all this stuff. I saw these things. And so she is asking these questions. Any thoughts on whether AR is worth exploring? Do you have any recommendations for consultants who can navigate the legal landscape? Well, what should we do about ChatGPT? You can see all this stuff. So we're using the ICP in a persona form to create essentially a simulated conversation that this person would ask. Now, if you know your customers, maybe you have real customer profiles as well as ICPs, and you have the data, you have news, you can see I just copy pasted right out of the headlines into this. You can anticipate what they need. You can anticipate what they want, and then you can deliver them value proactively that when they get the email, like, wow, how did you know? How did you know that was exactly what was on my mind? Right? If you have the ICP in really good format and you've built it and built these personas, there is no shortage of things you can do with it. I'll give you one last use case, and it's not a demo because I have not had time to build it, but it should work because it's pretty straightforward conceptually. Take your ideal customer profile and build an AI agent, and I'll put a link to our most recent live stream about building AI agents, and use it with your CRM as an advanced form of lead scoring. Every lead that comes in, have a generative AI model, use the ICP, and score how similar the new lead is to the ICP. Think of it instead of product market fit as lead company fit, lead marketing fit. I don't know. It uses an additional scoring mechanism to prioritize and sort your prospects and leads in your marketing, because language models, particularly the big foundation models, know a lot of different companies. They know information about leads and people's interests, particularly if you incorporate the text of what they fill out in a contact form. And score your leads. Score your leads against your ICP. How many of our leads are how similar are they to our ICP? Right? Talk about incredibly powerful. Part 5, wrapping up. As with so many other things, people have a tendency to treat ICPs like shelfware, and that's disappointing. People treat it like another document on the pile, and no, don't do that. Don't do that, because there's so much value in ICPs. There's so much value to be had in using these documents creatively and powerfully and in a very interesting way to extract value. Right? You want to use the power of generative AI to bring these things to life, to talk to them, to interact with them, to help you do stuff, to get more out of your work, to get more out of the data you already have, because you've got this data, I hope, and make use of it. So that is my hope, that you will use these ICPs with some of these use cases, implement them, and really make them sing. Blatant pitch. If you want help building the ICP, you know where to hit us up. If you want help bringing to life some of the examples that I walk through, you know where to find me. All right, enough plugging. Let's talk about what happened this week. On the blog and the YouTube channel is a 5-part series, making a podcast with generative AI, because a bit of a rant here. I love Notebook LM. I think it's a phenomenal piece of software. I think it is great at what it does. And I like the audio summary feature. I think it's really cool. It's a cool example of using Gemini with Google TTS to create a fun, easy to listen to piece of content. Every lazy marketer is like, oh, an easy button for a podcast. Look, I've got a podcast now. Look, I can just press the easy button on other people's content all day long, and aren't I smart? Yeah. So on the blog this week is using generative AI to make a podcast, but using it more intelligently than this. The example I showed earlier about having ChatGPT interview you. Because when everyone's podcast sounds the same, and it's exactly the same two Google neural voices, there is nothing separating you from everyone else. Right? It is a sea of sameness, and that is not a recipe for differentiation. That is not a recipe for value. So use that feature cautiously, and think about the underlying technologies that you could use to create something that provides just as much value as we did with Chloe in the example, but is uniquely you. It's all about you. All right. I could go on for a really long rant about that, but I'm not going to. Instead, let's talk about something that you care about, jobs. What jobs are out this week? We have Associate in Analytics at Dentsu, Chief Data Scientist at Flickforge, Chief Data Scientist at FinTech startup of some kind. Corporate transformation. Holy smokes. Corporate transformational analytics manager at Brightspeed. That is a mouthful. I hope that job pays well. Digital marketing manager at Supreme Optimization. Epic Clarity analyst at Sidious Tech. Head of marketing at The Studio. Lead of marketing analytics at Gemini. Marketing automation and operations specialist at Yield School. Marketing data insights analyst at Point Click Care. Native media buyer at Red Gobo. Search engine optimization manager at Market JD, senior analyst marketing analytics at Bimbo Bakeries. Oh, it's pronounced Bimbo. It's Mexican. They own Wonder Bread. Senior analyst at customer insights at Square Trade, and senior SEO specialist at Veracity Insurance Solutions. So there is hiring. In general, marketing jobs have been ticking upwards in the last couple of weeks and stuff. So hopefully that is a sign for job seekers that the market is improving. Upcoming events, Marketing Plus B2B Forum in Boston in November, Social Media Marketing World in San Diego, Content Jam in Chicago, and I feel like there's just 2 more things. Oh yeah, AMA Houston online in November, and SMPS, the Society for Marketing Professional Services in Columbus in July. So lots and lots of events. It's now Q4, if you have a year-end thing or a year kickoff thing in the beginning of the year, and you've got some budget that's use it or lose it, and you'd like a speaker to come in, hit me up, because we are trying to get the calendar sorted out and set. And particularly if it's in the quieter months like December, January, before it gets to conference season, I have more availability. So would love to come and close out the year or kick off the new year with you. And all the things that you can do with AI and analytics and data science. That is going to do it for this episode of the newsletter. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. And I will talk to you on the next one. Take care. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And if you want to know when new videos are available, hit the bell button to be notified as soon as new content is live.